think I got my first bike probably 7, 8 years old, you know. And it was my freedom. I'd go everywhere on my bicycles, as a young boy. So.
Certainly the physical aspect of it, you know, being out, the air, the exercise, it's just exhilarating. But I also know that some of the most difficult problems I've ever solved in my life, I've solved on a bicycle or on skis.
I did my first 3-day ride when I was 17 years old. I had my mother in nervous wreck. These other 2 boys were older, and one had done it a couple of times, and she allowed it. I don't think she liked it. She allowed it. And by the time we got to the last day, it was down to me solo. I did so many tours from 2 days to 60 days. Back in 1976, the country celebrated bicentennial. It was a nationwide celebration of the country's 200th year. There was a company in a club in Missoula that decided that they were going to design a path for people to ride across the country for the bicentennial. And this was just a little club. I mean, it was just a tiny little club. But somehow, one of the major magazines, it might have been Time, picked up on the idea. And it became like really popular. All these people wanted to ride across the country, including me. I just thought it was really, really just an incredible thing. But in 1976, my son Peter was born. There was no way I could ride a bicycle across the country and still have my head on my shoulder when I got back. So I held on to that for many, many, many years. And then it was just at a point where everything was like mellow, you know? I wasn't worried about money. I wasn't worried about bike. I wasn't worried about, you know, when I say I wasn't worried, I felt that I could just walk away from all that for a while, and it would all survive. May of that year, I hopped on a bicycle. I went down to Virginia, put my rear tire in the Atlantic, and I rode across the country, and I rode the Astoria, Oregon, and I put my front tire in the Pacific. I left Yorktown, Virginia with no one. And I wound up in Astoria, Oregon with the 2 guys that we had met along the way, and we decided to share the same hotel and everything. And so, but I met tons of riders. We all became great friends, and if they were going in the same direction with you, you'd inevitably, you know, you might not see them for 4 or 5 days, but then you camp somewhere and they'd be there. And so that was really nice. So I'm going across the country, and I'm in the Ozarks, and it's a beautiful night, and I'm cruising along maybe 20 miles an hour. And this idiot and this old Ford pickup throws an apple at me, and it hits me in my arm, and it's solid, and he's probably doing 60 and I'm doing 20. The apple hit me like a velocity of 80 miles an hour or some ungodly thing, and it took me down. I was in agony. I mean, I was really, really, really hurting. I poured water on it. I did everything I could to try to relieve the pain. Every time a car went by, I would wave and no one would stop. And finally, this young girl, she came over, and I said, you know, can you just call the police and the ambulance for me? And so another 10 minutes goes by or so, and then all of a sudden this truck pulls up. These 2 guys get out, and they're in khakis, and one of them's he's got a holster on each side and guns that are probably 14 inches long, silver. And I thought, oh my God, they're going to just shoot me here and kill me. And, you know, I mean, like, right? And so what happened? And I said, who are you? And he said, I'm the sheriff. Okay. I'm going to send my deputy down there to look for that apple. Well, by this time, my arm is swollen. It's twice, maybe even more normal size. And another 10, 15 minutes goes by, and this ambulance pulls up. Said, well, we're going to take you to the hospital. so I go to the hospital, a little town called Eminence. Well, it's got 2 doctors for the whole hospital. She calls up the doctor that's on call, woman. Well, he's eating dinner. He'll be here in a couple hours. We need to get x-rays, right? So we go and get x-rays, and waiting for the x-rays to develop. And, you know, it just, my adrenaline's coming down at this point. And so I said to the woman, I'm just going to take a walk around the hospital just to walk some of this off. Oh, you can't do that. And she gets in a big argument with me. Well, what if we have to do emergency surgery on you? I said, not in this hospital. She's got the x-rays. I said, I want to see the x-rays. She said, you a doctor? I said, no, I'm not a doctor. I want to see my x-rays. Can't show them to you unless you're a doctor. I said, I don't think that's true. She winds up calling the doctor. Doctor says I can see him. So I look at the x-rays, and I couldn't see any fractures or anything, just enormous amounts of bruising. All this time that I'm in there, I'm thinking, okay, if my arm is broken and it has to be in a cast, what I'm going to do is get to the next town. I'm going to buy a recumbent, set it up for one side, and I'll send my other bicycle back, right? I mean, I have to finish my trip. So the doctor finally comes. Well, you know this is going to end your trip. You can't ride anymore. And I said, why can't I ride anymore? He said, wow, you could have internal bleeding. It could kill you. I looked at him and I said, you know, more likely to die from eating biscuits and gravy in the morning, you know? And the nurse turns to him and says, see, I told you what he was like. My arm swelled up for a long time. I had in that bandage for a long time. And as I traveled this journey, I became known as Popeye Arm. All the time I would see, I hear Popeye Arm's coming through. Oh, hope to meet Popeye Arm. I'm in the middle of Kansas, and there's nothing in Kansas. I mean, that's like, you have to go 10 miles to find anything. So I just kept pedaling and pedaling and pedaling. And the wind was so strong behind me, it really blew me along. I was kind of sideways on the bicycle and everything. And I came across this little tiny post office building. I knocked on the door, and this woman came up from the basement, and she said, oh, come in, my God, come in. And so I went in the basement with her, and I waited out the tornado. At the other end of Kansas, that was actually sort of at the beginning. It was at the other end of Kansas. And I was riding along, and this cop pulled up next to me, and he said, you know, we're going to have a tornado. It's going to come right through here. He says, I would advise you to buckle down for the night. And I said, well, you got a spot you can recommend? And he recommended this campground. And it wasn't too far away, 5-6 miles or something. And I went there, and I set my tent up, and I went in the tent, and the tornado came, and it was wild. The winds were wild. And I immediately went over to the washrooms. The trees were bent over horizontal and everything, and I'm thinking, my tent's going to be in another state tomorrow. The year I rode my bicycle across the country, my brother-in-law planned a surprise party, but he planned it at my house
because he wanted to keep it a secret from my sister, right? Oddly enough, I also had an office party the same night. So I wasn't even going to be there till late. And then they also had a party for Ann's father. So my sister Kathy thought she was coming to the party for Ann's father. And Ann's father thought that Ann was down to go to the party for Kathy. So it was really right. So I got there late. I mean, it was, I don't know what time it was, but there was still a bunch of people sitting on the floor in my pool room and drinking whatever and so on. And as Ann told the story, I just flew into the air and flew over everybody and sat down next to her. And the first thing she asked me is, I hear you rode your bicycle across the country. And I said, yeah. And she said, aren't you too old for that? So then we started dating a little bit, but she was in Vermont and so on. And I had sold my home in Quebec, so I was missing out on the big mountain. So I would come up here, stay in a bed and breakfast, and we would meet up and we would go skiing together. And it's a relationship built very, very fast. And then I asked Tegan if I could marry her, and she obviously said yes. And I asked her father if I could marry her, and I think he was just ecstatic. If either one of them said no, I still would have done it. But we got married, and I bought her a bicycle for her wedding present. If you can experience something, and even if it's limited, you should experience it. You shouldn't wait till you can get that 4 weeks in Europe for that grandiose vacation. If you can go for a weekend to Paris, go. And I think that's a really important lesson to learn, because you can spend your whole life waiting for the right opportunity, and you really shouldn't do that. I have lived a life that is just, yeah, I couldn't have asked for a better life. I really could not have asked for a better life. I've had, so many wonderful experiences. I've seen so much. I've traveled the world. I've done things that people never will, most people will never think of, and so it's just been, it's been a marvelous ride. And we all got to go. It's kind of the game plan.
How would you like to be remembered?
Is Jim? I don't know how to answer that question other than as Jim. I mean, I think I'm unique in a lot of ways, and I suppose you could remember me from my bicycling or my skiing or whatever, or my piano playing, but I think the aggregate of all that is who I am. And I think I love this project because people, my great-grandchildren will be looking at this and saying, wow, that's cool. He was totally crazy. Right? I look back on some of the things I've done in my life and I think, why did I ever do that? That was insane.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies baby saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And yes, I